Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Montana High School Association and the Montana Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana. KKVU HD3 Stevensville and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Tootell and Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX television.
I like football!
Now, sports talk from Montana for Montana. Live from the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tootell and Coulter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. Biggest moments of the decade. Another Grizzly is the Conference Player of the Week. And Greg Bell from the Tacoma News Tribune to talk Seahawks, Packers, divisional NFL playoffs. It is Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Outstanding to be with you and across the state on SWX Montana Television. Hi, how are you? Thanks for being here on this Tuesday afternoon. We are broadcasting from, the Kurtz Polaris studios and also from our little perch here above everything on the second story. People don't know what a great view we got here looking out to the east. Mount Sentinel and everything. You turn you on there, Coulter. But, it used to, it's starting to stay light a little bit later now. It's just starting to feel it a little bit.
Indeed. We haven't really talked about in all our internal transitions going on here at Missoula Broadcasting Company. I don't think we probably will that much, but we are.
Way to open the can, though.
We're moving. That's not going to be really like a secret. But the point, to emphasize your point, the only thing that I'm not excited about is I don't get to look right now. For those who cannot see, I am looking at Mount Sentinel at the M from a second floor building, which is great.
It's beautiful. It's great vista that we have here to the east/northeast. If you'd like to listen live, you can do it on the web, 1029ESPN.com. Just incredible.
I should have been a spy.
Opportunity Bank brings us the stream each and every day, so you can listen live no matter where you are. Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. You can also pick up your phone and call 329-1899, 329-1899, the phone number. All guests join us via the Rankish Brothers RV phone line. Let's take a look at what we got in the show today. It's I realize that we're like a week into 2020, but there's one more sort of thing that we wanted to cover from the decade that was, the 2010s. Or 20-teens. I don't know how to speak about it.
I don't know.
Anyway, and that is, what was the biggest moment for the athletic departments at Montana State and the University of Montana, whether that was a football, whether that was a basketball, maybe it's some of both. But, we've talked about the all-decade teams and some of that stuff, and where are these two, universities at, where the status that they're at, through the decade. But what was the high point? What was the big moment for these two schools? So we'll go through that a little bit. We will talk some basketball. Kendall Manuel been named the Big Sky Conference Player of the Week, so back-to-back weeks a Montana Grizzly has earned that award. Saeed Pridgett last week, and now Kendall Manuel this week. We will get into a little bit of high school hoops. What are the standings? Where are we at right now here in this part of the season? We'll talk a little bit about Chuck Morrell, who's leaving Montana Tech. In fact, has left Montana Tech to Fresno State. Pretty big jump there to go from NAIA to the FBS. He's going to be a linebackers coach, I believe, there for Fresno State, as Fresno State has a new coaching staff. Kalen DeBauer coming on there. So we'll touch on that a little bit. We also, at the top of the hour, looking forward to having Greg Bell back on the show. Greg Bell, if you've been with us, joined us a couple of times early on in the year, but he is back with us now, and truly, I mean, this guy, nobody has spent more time and is just better at analyzing the Seattle Seahawks and what they're up to, and has his finger on the pulse of that team and getting ready for this game against Green Bay than Greg Bell. So we'll certainly look forward to talking with him as well in the next hour. So there you go. That is our show outlook. It is brought to us by ShineAutoDetailing.net. Go on right now. Get yourself a free $20 winter windshield service if you mention that you heard it on Tootell and Nuanez. It's just that simple. ShineAutoDetailing.net. Coulter, have you seen how much tickets are to Coachella?
Oh man, we could do a whole segment if you really wanted to get me going.
I mean, so
Coachella is
signed up.
One of the most fascinating things to me.
I signed up for the pre-order to Coachella for one reason and one reason only.
You want to go to Coachella?
Of course I do, and you know why I want to go.
Because Rage Against the Machine's there.
That's it.
You realize Coachella is in the middle of the desert, right?
I know exactly where it is. I looked it all up. It's not in the middle of the desert. It's inland Southern Cal.
It's in the desert. I've been.
People that can handle the heat say that Coachella is miserably hot.
Yeah.
You, Mr. Flannel, will certainly perish at Coachella.
What I'll do is I will shave a squared pattern into my chest hair there to maintain the flannel look while also maximizing the coolness factor that I will be having. $470.
That's actually not as shocking as I would have thought. I would have actually said more.
It's actually, it is for 3 days. So if you say, okay, well, it's $125 a day, then that's fine. It's also a $120 processing fee. So 4 tickets comes out to like $1,800 and change. I didn't push the buy button on them, but I'm tempted. Just put it on the car and let it all ride. YOLO. Are we still saying that? Is that still a thing that's out there?
I mean, you're 39, so you're on the brink of. You got a foot in each side.
I'm not on the brink of anything. No. I don't. I'm not defined by any of these.
You have multiple children.
Lots of people have multiple children. Lots of people got no children. Lots of people are a lot of different ages, and everybody's living their own life. I'm doing whatever I want. Shave a checkerboard into my chest here. You think I care about any of this stuff? Don't care.
Oh, I love it.
Now that ain't gonna happen. But I do want to go. So just keep your ears peeled. It'll be if I end up going to Coachella, it will certainly be like a hitchhike situation. That's the only way. Like I got to make that money back somehow. Selling the thing, I'm a little bit worried because I would buy multiples and then attempt to get a little bump up on the resale of that thing, but I'm not sure because it's a very it's like you get the it's not just a sticker, you know what I mean? It's like a scan it in wristband that you have, and so I don't want to mess that up where somehow that falls apart. So I don't know. I'll keep you posted. I would say it's not really high likelihood at this point.
Coachella just is so funny because on one hand, I think it's an outstanding music festival. I mean, they book such a wide array of such amazing acts, and I absolutely guarantee you that the sticker price of whatever you pay for a full pass is worth it if you maximize it. I mean, there's no question you're going to see so much good music. But on the other hand, it's become such an Instagram world type lens, and it's just this pretty people party. I just think it's funny because I've had a lot of friends that have gone throughout the years, and they continue to go now that we're into our 30s, and it just seems like it's so much more draining and exhausting to go to when you're not 22 anymore.
Well, you know what's more draining and exhausting? Everything. Like, I had to get up to go to the bathroom, and I was upset. So I had to stand and get off my couch. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Coulter, the 20 whatever they were are over, and we're into the 20s now.
Roaring 20s.
Roaring 20s. Biggest moment of the decade for the Cat and the Grizz. And I was thinking about this earlier.
We're doing athletic departments, football, basketball, a little bit of each.
I think a little bit of each is fine.
I got some ideas for everybody involved.
It seems to me that the high water mark, I would say this, the biggest moment, and it's not necessarily the best moment, but the biggest moment for the University of Montana in the last decade was the hiring for the second time of Bobby Hauck. It came with the most publicity, the most reaction, positive and negative, and with a level of excitement that I hadn't seen before, and also with a level of quandary, of wonder, of whether this thing was actually going to work out, of whether Bobby Hauck in the 2020s could be the Bobby Hauck of the 2000s, both in terms of the product on the field and also just the nature of culture and the way that it's shifted, especially at the University of Montana between the time he was here the first time and the present time. And so in terms of the biggest story at the University of Montana, that was it to me.
Second to only the scandal that ripped through campus, ripped through this town. I mean, unfortunately, the absolute biggest story in the state of Montana was all the different tentacles that came off of the web that was the sexual assault scandal on the University of Montana campus, and they all go together and culminate. Well, culminate's the wrong word, but somehow, some way, it's completely unexpectedly culminated in Bobby Hauck's return.
It came back around. There's no question that's the biggest story. You're absolutely right. It also, I guess, Bobby Hauck is an instance. It's like it is an event that took place that you can sort of wrap your head around, whereas this happened over time. There's multiple layers to it. There's a bunch of different perspectives on it. And while as a whole, taken as a whole, it's certainly the biggest story, probably, like you said, in the state of Montana. But I guess I didn't put that into this because it's not a moment. This thing that happened at a time, it's broader than that. When it comes to, though, the best sports moment for the University of Montana, I'm hard-pressed. I mean, again, this isn't just one moment, but the men's basketball team, the last two seasons, and the wins that they have had, setting the all-time record in terms of total wins in back-to-back seasons, winning the tournament and going to the tournament both years, is they were the best team in the state of Montana of any sport at any level. And it's hard to do better than that, right? I mean, it's hard to just be better than that. And that group of seniors that graduated last year from that basketball team are legendary at the University of Montana as far as it goes. And to have watched them over the course of that time, and I think too, I mean, the two moments I guess that stand out to me are the ones that you would expect, and that is the winning of the Big Sky Conference tournament in Reno and then in Boise in back-to-back years. An individual game that stands out to me was just the absolute dismantling. I mean, the crushing of Weber State, who I thought was going to be the next best team in the conference. They actually matched up in the semifinal last year in Boise. And then the Eastern Washington game was, in fact, they came from behind twice against Eastern Washington in back-to-back years to do it. Mm-hmm. You have the Bobby Moorhead, run to the three-point line, turnaround bomb 2 years ago to get it back, to bring it back from the edge. I mean, that's the game of games, that Eastern Washington game.
The Northern Colorado game, the game before.
Right. Or the Northern Colorado game.
Bobby Moorhead did the run back.
Yeah,
and then they had the great, I think
that was the semifinal.
Right, and then in the final, they had the 13-0 run out of the locker room. It looked like they were drained after the Northern Colorado game. Then they had the 13-0 run.
And had
out of the locker room.
18 consecutive stops.
18 consecutive stops. Ahmad Rory slapping the floor and just laughing at Eastern Washington. Yeah. That's when I knew he was a dog.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. So anyway, that would be to me the height for the University of Montana, like the best moment there.
I think that the moment that probably it's easy to forget it because it was at the very beginning of the decade. But the moment that probably resonated on a national level more than any other moment, because the Grizz basketball team they won 5 conference championships this decade. So they were, every other year they went to the NCAA tournament, give or take. 5 out of 10 times they went, and they went back-to-back years 2 of those times. But certainly the most successful program in the Big Sky this decade, University of Montana men's basketball. But the most significant national moment, because those Grizz teams, almost all of them went to the tournament and ran into Wisconsin, Syracuse, Michigan, and Michigan. The only even kind of good draw was when they got New Mexico, which was still not a good draw, but they were more competitive than against the true Blue Bloods. But it was in 2010 in the Big Sky Conference Championship game when Anthony Johnson scored 30-plus consecutive points after halftime. He won an ESPY He scored 42 points. I mean, he won, it was the moment of the year at the ESPY Awards. He won an ESPY. So on a national level, I think you can't really dispute that was the most impactful moment.
It's a good one.
And then now in retrospect, not only did he score points in bunches, but that game was the first of a 3-year span where Montana knocked Damian Lillard and the Weber State Wildcats out and kept them out of the NCAA tournament. And Lillard, who's no question the greatest player in Big Sky Conference history, especially now retrospectively as he continues to add to his legacy as an all-NBA player, he never went to the NCAA tournament.
It's crazy.
Because of Anthony Johnson and Will Cherry. That group of guys kept him out. And so I think that one you have to really point to. As far as specific moments, you pointed to Bobby Hauck's return. As far as Grizz football goes, that's definitely one of them. Probably the biggest news-making event. This decade is sort of cut in half.
Yes, it is.
Because when the Grizz missed the playoffs in 2010 under Robin Pflugrad, the scandal had not hit yet. But everybody wondered if that was going to be the first step towards the erosion of what had been, without peer, greatness in the Big Sky Conference. At that moment when Montana State won in Missoula to cap the 2010 season, it snapped 17 years in a row that the Grizz made the playoffs. 12 years in a row the Grizz had won the Big Sky Conference Championship. In the meantime, the Cats win the Big Sky Conference Championship with Denarius McGee as a redshirt freshman as the Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year. They go to the playoffs. And then in 2011, you're year 2 under Pflugrad. They get it rolling a little bit, but you're still kind of tenuous on where we're at with this coach who's running the spread. And Robin Pflugrad had Oregon roots, so they're doing a whole bunch of stuff that was completely different than what people had been used to seeing under Joe Glenn and then Bobby Hauck. Like the previous 10 years had been physical football, ground and pound. We're winning with defense and clock management, and now all of a sudden we're throwing bubble screens. And that was a hearkening to the Don Reed, Dave Dickinson days, but it was not the same as what people had seen for the last 10 years. So people were still a little bit tenuous on where Pflugrad could take the program. But then as that team continued to gain steam, Montana State also continued to gain steam. And Montana State was the darling of the country. They got this sophomore quarterback who's the best player in the Big Sky, and he's just a winner. And he's winning and winning and winning. And you got this great running back in Cody Kirk, and you have all these different pieces, and they ascend all the way to number 1 in the country. And I remember
they play Montana.
I remember I wrote a cover story about the history of the rivalry and the way it had tilted back and forth throughout the decades. And it was the cover story for our Cat Grizz magazine at the Bozeman Daily Chronicle. And I remember I didn't write the headline on it, though. And the cover story, the headline was, "Is the Tide Turning in the Greatest Rivalry in the West?" And the story was just about how the tide had turned back and forth and how that 2011 game was a pivotal moment for Montana State to truly affirm and seize momentum. But then Montana goes into Montana State and destroys the number 1 team in the country, and that Grizz team rolls all the way to the semifinals of the playoffs. They killed Northern Iowa 48-10, and I remember watching that game in a bar in Huntsville, Texas, after watching Montana State get destroyed. And all I kept thinking to myself was, man, as much hype as the Cats were able to build for about a year and a half here, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because in reality, it's the Grizz that are still in the Final Four, and the Cats are still, the ones that are chasing the glory.
Trying to get there, yeah.
But then all the things that happened over the next 6 months, from all this speculation about this rampant sexual assault scandal involving all these football players, then to the true criminal charging of 2 different Grizz football players, then to the absolutely insane publicity that the Jordan Johnson trial received, then to the John Krakauer book and the revelations of all the mishandlings of all sorts of sexual assault cases, both on campus and in this community, to the Department of Justice coming to Missoula, to the NCAA coming to Missoula. The scandal exploded to a level that I think no one could ever have comprehended. And the fact that the University of Montana navigated it, I mean, they are still licking their wounds from that. There's no question. You look at their enrollment numbers, you look at the work that they've had to do with the football team to repair its image, to repair its productivity, all those things. But when you actually look at it, it is actually in one way a testament to the strength of the foundation of the program, because even with one of the craziest scandals you could have in a small college town, the football program still only had 1 losing season. They still only fired one coach. They've had 4 head coaches. I guess Robin Pflugrad was fired because of the scandal and Bob Stitt not renewed. But I guess the whole point is that it could have been even more. It could have been way bigger pile of smoldering ashes, and it wasn't quite that, even though it definitely had huge impacts on the program.
One other thing at the University of Montana, and then we'll go to Montana State, that I think you'd just be crazy not to mention in the context of this was the retirement of Robin Selvig.
Absolutely.
Robin Selvig, the greatest coach in the state, in the history of the state of Montana. I think you can say, I mean, maybe, there's some high school guys who are absolutely epic in their, at their level and in what they did. But, what he...
865 wins.
I mean, come on. This is so anyway, so his tenure coming to a close and somewhat surprisingly, I mean, I think that a lot of people, he's been here forever, but he's not, by no means an old guy or whatever, as far as
he's in his late 60s, but he's in great health
and finally
he had
decided
great enthusiasm for it.
That it was time, and so I was like, wow, whoa. And I mean, I don't even think a lot of people had thought anything other than a passing thought about, well, what's after Rob, but that moment in that press conference, I'll never forget it. Very emotional one, and one that culminated 40 years of tremendous history at the University of Montana and in women's basketball as a sport. Period. I mean, women's college basketball now, still to this day, without question, is the height of the sport. It's not the WNBA. The WNBA is going to win any game, of course, that they play against college. But in terms
in
of
America,
but in terms of interest and in terms of publicity, the women's college game is the pinnacle of women's basketball, and Robin Selvig was on the forefront and instrumental in a lot of that to build it to what it's become, and then for him to step away was just a major point of reflection and congratulations, and also sort of a wow moment.
And when you talk about Montana State women's basketball, those two things go hand in hand, because Tricia Binford was hired at Montana State in the early 2000s, and that program was in a state of disarray. I mean, they had multiple coaches that had been involved in, I don't know, we don't need to delve too far into it because a lot of it was sort of not in the public eye, but they had 2 not great situations back to back, and then they hired Coach Binford, and she won 3 games her first year, and then Montana State was basically solid for the next 10, and not on par with the Lady Grizz. And the moment that it shifted, and it's never come back.
Yeah.
And Coach Binford has now led Montana State to the first NCAA tournament berth since 1991. And this Bobcat team looks like they're in line to probably do that again. And they've won the regular season title a couple times. And they've been in the top half of the league. And now they've won 7 out of 8 against the Lady Grizz after losing. I think Robin Selvig lost 10 times to the Cats in 40 years. So it's shifted. And now you wonder, with Binford here in her 16th season, it was going to be impossible for Binford to catch Selvig, because Selvig had been on the job for some 30 years by the time Trish was hired. Well, now Trish has
she's the most veteran coach in the league.
She's the most veteran coach in the league, and she has that big of a gap over everybody else. And so you wonder, if you're getting the main Montana girls, and you are one of the main Montana schools in women's basketball, they draw so well. If you get the top recruits, you're going to have a top program. And you just wonder if the shift is going to continue, because as of right now, since Coach Selvig retired, Binford has taken that momentum and ran with it, and Montana State has been the women's basketball team in the state. And that's crazy to think, because Montana was not only the women's basketball program in the state, not only in the conference, but one of the greatest in the region, one of the greatest in the Western United States, one of the greatest in the country. I mean, Street Smith magazine had Montana as the number 7 basketball program, women's basketball program of all time, up there with UConn, Tennessee, Stanford, Notre Dame, Montana. And so for Montana State to be able to take advantage after the legend steps away, to me, that's the biggest women's basketball moment of the decade.
Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Coulter, for Montana State, when I look at the athletic department in general, and especially buoyed by the football team, and they've done some amazing stuff. We talked briefly about the rodeo team yesterday being nationally elite rodeo team, but certainly not with the sort of eyeballs and national interest or even regional interest that you get for football or basketball. I realize, with Coach Ash, Montana State ascended to number 1 in the nation at one stage, as you already touched on. The biggest moment for the Montana State Bobcats in this past decade, just happened, as far as I'm concerned. A 4th consecutive win over the Grizzlies to have the first graduating class in, I don't know, you'll know better than I, how long to have never lost.
Since Sonny Holland was the head coach in the late 70s. I think
late 70s.
I think the 74 to 78 Bobcats was the last time that a team went undefeated against the Grizzlies. 40
years. Since you, that's right. It's 42 years.
42 years, yep.
Since that has ever happened, and then to prove it, so to speak, by not winning 1 but 2 postseason football games after a bye and being in the national semifinal. That's the high water mark in terms of a postseason run since the '84 national championship run. This is the best class, far as football goes, since 1984 at Montana State, and it happened this past season. And it obviously has been building in the last couple of seasons, but sort of being stamped in this season, and that is the biggest moment, the best moment to me for Montana State athletics in this past decade.
When it comes to football, men's and women's basketball in this state, there's going to be a never-ending argument over, is too much made out of a specific rivalry, especially when the rivalries are fierce like they are at Auburn, Alabama, or Montana State, or wherever it might be. But in this state, especially when it comes to football, it's a 365-day-a-year rivalry. The coaches always say that, but it's also so important because so many of the kids in the state pay attention to the rivalry, have preconceived notions about where they want to go, and the rosters are built of Montana kids.
In football. Yeah, right. I mean, the rivalry is the rivalry categories for football.
And women's basketball. Because women's basketball has so many Montana girls on the rosters as well.
Yeah, okay.
And women's basketball is absolutely the most popular women's sport in the state of Montana. I mean, the Lady Grizz are averaging like 3,200 fans a game right now. I mean, they're drawing at a top 30 level in the country.
Oh, it's the most popular women's sport, did you say? Oh, no question. Yeah, not close, of course. Yeah.
But from a strictly football perspective, for Montana State to go through just the horrendous mentality that came along with the streak, losing 16 years in a row, being the superior program, and then having your rival lap you, and then lap you and lap you and lap you and lap you, and just all the vitriol and all the bad feelings and all the entrenched mindset that came with that. It takes a full 2 decades to chip away at that. And Montana State, even in that 2011 season when they got killed by the Grizz in Bozeman, they could have then regressed, but they kept going, and they won in Missoula the next year, and they maintained their status as a top 10 program. And then when it became readily apparent that they couldn't take the next step under the last coaching staff to go fully opposite side of the spectrum, fire the winningest coach in school history and hire this energetic and maniacal coach in Jeff Choate,
who's never been a head coach at the college level,
who's never been a head coach, to have it happen during a time when your athletic director position is actually in flux, and then Peter Fields let go very soon after. I mean, internally, it came down to Jeff Choate and another guy, and they almost hired the other guy, and who knows where they would have been right now. But to continue to work at it, but then also the last 4 years to harness the momentum of your town and your university and use it to your advantage in almost every aspect of athletics, not the least of which has been football. I think that's probably the defining moment for Montana State, is the fact that they kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And a lot of people would say the Grizz set the pace for the 21st century, but the Bobcats kept pace, and then they pulled even. And then at the end of the decade, with a 48-14 win in Bozeman, they inched ahead. And I think that's sort of the defining factor right now. And that's not to say that Montana, I mean, again, I think Montana deserves a ton of credit for going through everything that they went through and still having the foundation of a program that they still do. And I expect them to be back in a big way. They already were this year, but I expect it to continue. But I think that just using the momentum that exists in the Gallatin Valley and not folding when it comes to the football aspect. To me, that's the defining moment of the decade for the Cats.
It's Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Kendall Manuel, the player of the week. That's back-to-back players of the week in the first 2 weeks of the season for men's basketball at the University of Montana. We'll highlight his week next.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
At the Montana Club, our goal is to create a menu of mouth-watering food with variety to satisfy any craving. From the garden-fresh ingredients in our salads to our succulent, perfectly grilled Montana Club Angus steaks, we take pride in every detail that goes into preparing your food. Top off your meal with a premium cocktail, wine, or microbrew. Come as you are and satisfy your craving with our home-style breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Hey there, Coulter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell and Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Coulter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. Longtime Montana Tech head coach Chuck Morrell is leaving the Ore Diggers to join Kalen DeBauer's staff at Fresno State. Morrell has been the head man at Tech for 9 seasons, accruing a 52-44 record to go with 2 playoff appearances. The Ore Diggers' longest postseason run was in 2016 when they made the national quarterfinals. Morrell was named the Frontier Coach of the Year 3 times during his tenure. He was also the acting AD for 3 years while he was there, ending in 2017. Current Montana Tech Athletic Director Matt Steppen said his search for a new football coach will be a fast and efficient one.
At Madison Square Garden in New York City on Sunday, Boulderburg, Montana native Jess Lockwood placed 3rd in the PBR, unleashed the Beast Monster Energy Buck-Off. Lockwood recently won his 2nd World Championship. Lockwood's showing also included the ride of the day, in which he scored a 91.75 upon Little 2 Train. The event earned the world's #1 bull rider nearly $24,000.
2 Montana golfers have signed letters of intent to play in college. 406 MT Sports is reporting that Hamilton's Bryce Reed and Callie Cannon of Polson have each signed letters of intent to golf at Dickinson State in North Dakota next fall. Reed was an all-conference player 3 times while golfing for the Bronx and was all-stater twice. Cannon was twice selected the outstanding female golfer at Polson.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
player of the week in the Big Sky Conference. It's Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. If you'd like to check us out on the social medias, you can do that. Twitter and Instagram at 102.9 ESPN. Doing giveaways and stuff there, following around. Got some good stuff going on, updates and whatnot all the time. At Gus Tootell on Twitter, at Skyline Sports MT on Twitter as well. Coulter, the Grizzlies went 1-1 this weekend. This is kind of an ironic deal. Now, everybody was a winner and a loser, I think, this week. Northern Colorado, I guess, went 2-0. So they're maybe the one team that, a lot of times it's about winning both games when they give out these weekly awards. But when you have a guy who scores 30 points in a game, it's kind of tough to pass that guy up. And Kendall Manuel, 13 of 16, 30 points, averaged 23.5 points in the two games over the course of the road sweep. Not road sweep. They were sweeping across the country is what I mean to say. They split the games, one win at Southern Utah and then the loss at Northern Colorado. The irony, though, is by far his much better game was in the loss. But nonetheless, still getting the weekly Big Sky Conference Award for Kendall Manuel. And I believe this is his first one of these. Is that right? Did he win one before? So congratulations to him on that. I thought Jonah Radabaugh probably had a good argument to be made for that as well. But, I mean, a lot of times, look, it does come down to offense, right? I mean, that's what they look at on this kind of thing.
It does.
Outstanding. And it was, I mean, his game, individual game against Northern Colorado was outstanding. It was phenomenal.
Against Montana, you mean? You said against,
no. Kendall Manuel's against Northern Colorado.
Yes.
Radabaugh was great against both Montana State and Montana.
And he was tasked with guarding Harold Frey and Syed Pridgett, two of the best players in the league. And he did a great job against them.
But nonetheless, that's a nice feather in the cap, certainly for Kendall Manuel. The Grizzlies play Thursday, Montana men's and women's basketball teams against Eastern Washington, but then are off on Saturday. So this is the end of the sort of awkward 5-game start to the season where they started on the Monday and then did the Thursday thing, however it went, Saturday, Monday, whatever. I don't know how the days work. I don't know the succession of weeks. None of this matters to me. But in any case, they'll play on Eastern Washington and then have the weekend off before they get going again next week. So this is a huge game for Montana. Look, we can say right now, can't we, Coulter, that even though everybody is sort of all in the pack, 3-1 is the top, 1-3 is the worst, or even 1-2. It seems to me that the contenders in the Big Sky Conference are the two Montana schools, Northern Colorado, Eastern Washington, and I'm going to give a sleeper still to Southern Utah.
And how about Weber State?
Maybe.
It'd be interesting.
Did Weber State not lose to Idaho? Did I see that right?
Weber State held on for a 1-point victory at Idaho. Idaho had a shot at the buzzer to win the game, and they missed.
Okay, and who did Weber State lose to? Because they do have a loss on their schedule. I don't know who it was that they lost to. Look, anytime you have Jarek Harding, seems to me you're in pretty good shape. And Weber State, yeah, of course, fair enough. Randy Ray knows what he's doing, and you're not going to sleep on the Wildcats. But, I mean, they lost by 60 to Utah State. And then they barely get by an Idaho team who's lost how many games to Division II schools?
Weber State lost to Eastern Washington.
Okay. And thank you, David. Eastern Washington's who jumped up and got Weber State.
That's not a bad loss.
No, it's not a bad loss.
Eastern's the best team in the league.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Yeah. And I think that's fair. But all I'm saying is, I think those are your teams.
They also lost to Northern Arizona.
You also told me, though, that Idaho State
has a couple junior college guys that no one has a scout on yet, and we'll see. We'll see how those guys adjust, because as we know, I mean, Harold Frey's a great example. When you got 60 games of film on Harold Frey, you know his tendencies, and even the greatest players have tendencies. So people know, you hard hedge the high ball screen with Harold Frey. You don't let him shoot the step back. When he gets in the paint, you rough him up. You put a body on him. You knock him to the ground. When you become an elite player, especially when you are not only an elite player, but you don't have a secondary go-to guy. Syed Pridgett's another great example, right? Syed Pridgett was a 18 points per game scorer a year ago, but he was the fourth guy for Montana, even though he ended up being their leading scorer. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And now Syed Pridgett is the number one guy on the scouting report. How do you react to that? Mm-hmm. That's one thing Tyler Hall never got enough credit for. Tyler Hall established exactly what he could and could not do at Montana State right out the gate. Mm-hmm. And then everybody tried to take it away from him. And about 20% of the time they could, and 80% of the time he still did whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, and he had some horrific, 3 for 17 nights every once in a while, but he also had games where he hit 9 threes. And so, when people know what you can do and you can still do it, that's the true sign of greatness. But I want to talk about Weber State just for a quick minute, because Weber State has been the only school in the league that could say that they're a peer program to the University of Montana this decade, right?
Yeah.
And they've had some of the best talent in the league, no question. Damian Lillard, Jeremy Sanglin, Joel Ballenboy, all three of those guys went to the NBA. Sanglin and Ballenboy have kind of been hanging around on two-way contracts playing in the D-League, but still, I mean, those are outstanding players in the history of the Big Sky Conference. But the last 3 years...
Did you say Damian?
I said Damian, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Damian Lillard, absolutely.
I must have glazed over it.
But since that last Weber State team that beat Montana in the Big Sky Championship and then went on to play Villanova, that team that was led by Jeremy Sanglin and Joel Ballenboy,
yep.
Weber State has had 20 wins, and 18 wins. For everybody else in the league, that's great. But when you're talking about Ray's squads are 25 wins and has upwards of 30 wins a couple times, and you have some of the best players the league has seen this century. Well, now, I mean, Jarek Harding's a nice player, but we've seen this last couple of years. Weber, their league win totals have been, they went 12-6, 13-5, 11-9. And those are not elite records by any means, but also they've really struggled down the stretch each of the last 3 seasons. They've let chemistry issues get in the way. Last year, they had a talented team, and there was all sorts of infighting. And give Montana all the credit in the world. In that semifinal game of the Big Sky tournament, the Grizz took Weber State apart. They dismantled Weber State. But also, you could tell that Weber State was not that keen in being on the same floor. They were not that interested in being there. So I guess I just wonder, I mean, Ray got this gigantic contract extension. He's the only coach in the league that has the job security that he has. He deserves it. I mean, he's won the league 5 times. He's been the league coach of the year 4 times. But when he got that extension, that 8-year extension that he got, and with a salary that's much loftier, at least in terms of base salary, than anybody else in the league, they have not been what they once were. And I just wonder, I mean, it's like Jeff Cho at Montana State always says, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. Nobody in college sports is staying the same. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened at Montana State football. They got better until they leveled out for one season, and then they got worse. And as soon as you start getting worse, you have to fix it. And Weber, since that NCAA tournament team, 2015-16, they've gotten worse, no question about it. And they've had good individual players, but not the same quality of guys that they once had.
You're so right. And by the way, David did point out to me, Weber has also now lost their second league game to Northern Arizona, and they're 1-2 in conference play with 1 win by 1 point over what could be the worst team in the Big Sky Conference in Idaho. This is the thing that's so puzzling to me, because in addition, Jarek Harding's a great player. A lot of people know. Cody John and Israel Barnes are
great players,
phenomenal players. And Cody John was injured a couple years ago, but came back and was a very good player last year. And he was highly touted, sort of Jarek Harding-esque when they came in together. And then Jarek Harding, because he was playing, kind of ran away with some of the publicity. And Israel Barnes, I mean, he would have been second only to Bodie Hims, the freshman of the year last year in the Big Sky Conference, and he's an outstanding player. You got 3 potentially sort of all conference types of players on one team. You should be better than this. 5-9 and 1-2 in the Big Sky. I mean, that it's early. Look, it's very early. 3 games. Okay, you're not going to sit here and write off Weber State or anything like that. But I'm with you because it hasn't been talent.
Totally. I mean,
he's getting the dudes.
I mean, last year they had Cody John back healthy and Jarek Harding, but then they also had Zach Braxton, who was the best pure big in the league besides Jamar Coe.
Yep.
And they had Breckett Chapman, who at one point in his life was the number 1 recruit out of the state of Utah and one of the top 50 recruits in the country.
Went to Utah. Went to play for Larry Crisovia.
Went to Utah, couldn't pass a drug test, ends up back at Weber State. There's all sorts of rumors of what happened there. But, I mean, the guy's a 6'9" 3 who also led the league in shot block. I mean, he's a
tremendous player.
He's an outside of the Big Sky level of talent in every way. I mean, he's a 6'9" guy who can shoot threes and protect the rim. There's none of those in the Big Sky. And they went 11-9 in league last year. So
I don't know.
I just think that there's some questions that are arising for Weber State. And I think that when you talk about the momentum of programs in the league, that's going to be the biggest challenge for Travis DeCuire is after losing, he inherited a great team, and then he refortified it with his own guys, and now his core group of guys have moved on, and now he's trying to refortify it again. How does he keep the program at least at a manageable level when you have a program like Northern Colorado, who seems like they have upward trajectory under Jeff Linder. Eastern Washington certainly has upward trajectory. I mean, if you're talking about appeasing to new age kids and recruits, who you want to play for more than Shante Leggins?
Yeah, right.
I mean, Shante Leggins is one of the great in-game coaches in the league, just in terms of engendering his players with confidence.
That's right.
I mean, he takes all the pressure off of you. He takes all the pressure on himself.
Yep.
And so, it's going to be interesting to see the way that these programs sort of ebb and flow. But I agree with you. But I do think that Weber, especially with Jarek Harding, have been in and out of the lineup with an injury. Weber has some work to do to maintain that status amongst the Big Sky elite.
Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Greg Bell coming up in 15 minutes, covers the Seahawks for the Tacoma News-Tribune. Does a great job. Unbelievable, actually. I'm really interested to hear what he's got to say about the Seahawks as they are right now heading into Green Bay this weekend. But next, couple quick updates from the world of the high school basketball ranks, where teams are, what the standings are a little bit, and also Montana Grizzlies do land a new quarterback recruit commit. We'll get to that right after this. Hey, it's the new year. With all the resolutions, one of the best things you can do is start fresh by starting clean. A clean environment will help inspire you to do great things. Start fresh and clean inside your car with Shine Auto Detailing. Take pride in your ride. Schedule a full interior detail with Shine Auto Detailing. Most of their clients say they make the car cleaner than it was when it was new. Schedule online right now at shineautodetailing.net and mention you heard it here on this show. Tootell and Nuanez. They'll throw in a $20 winter windshield treatment for free for safer winter driving. Go to shineautodetailing.net, shineautodetailing.net.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
The holidays passed, sick of the snow, looking forward to the weekend and a tube of cookie dough? You got the wintertime blues now, baby. It's the wintertime blues.
Wait, the wintertime blues? Have you not been to the Desperado?
Desperado?
Yeah, nightly hockey and basketball, all the NFL playoffs, the best hot wings in Missoula, plus thick, juicy burgers and beer to go around. The Despo is an oasis of happy any time of the year.
Honey, get out of that rocking chair. The sun is shining at the Despo.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Welcome back. Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Some high school stuff for you before we get to Greg Bell and talk a little Seahawks. It is our Farmers State Bank Prep Extra segment. Farmers State Bank, your bank since 1907. Coulter, one thing quickly just wanted to update people on, but Sam Vidlak from Hidden Valley High School in Grants Pass, Oregon, is a quarterback. He's committed to the University of Montana for the class of 2021. So this is just a verbal commitment. Young kid still got, I guess, 2 years of high school left.
No,
He's got 1 year. He's a junior now.
Yeah,
he'll be a senior next year.
The fall of this next fall.
But he was a first-team All-State quarterback in Oregon, 6'1", and purportedly a 4.8 740. So you can, I don't know. You're running downhill, wind at your back. Somebody missed the start with the clock. Who knows? But nonetheless, an interesting deal, especially at the position, and always looking for people. This is obviously not a guy to fill the shoes of Dalton Sneed, but the pipeline that is the position of quarterback is a unique one because it it is usually the only position on the field where it's just one dude at the spot. I mean, every other position, maybe center, right, gets rotated out, but quarterback, it's like, okay, well, who's the guy?
And I think that there's a couple pretty common philosophies when it comes to this. There's the recruit for the competition and then fill in with depth. So, in other words, like Montana State did leading up to the 2013 the offseason following the 2013 season. They knew they had Denarius McGee graduating. They knew he had been a 4-year starter. So you recruit for the competition.
Yep.
You recruit so you know you got Quinn McQuarrie, Tanner Roderick, Jake Bleskin, and Dakota Prukop about to battle it out to come after this guy and take the starting quarterback job. And then probably once you get your starter, like they did with Dakota Prukop, maybe you don't emphasize recruiting the position quite as much. But then the other philosophy is the one that Bobby Hauck abides by, and that's just get a true quarterback that you plan on playing at quarterback in every class. And so they brought in Robbie Patterson, the junior college transfer, to fill in that junior class because they don't have any junior quarterbacks. They're going to have Garrett Graves as a quarterback / whatever else he might do for their sophomores. And they have Carson Rostad as their true / probably going to redshirt freshman. And they have Chris Brown coming off of a redshirt. So they have a quarterback in each class. They just needed a junior quarterback. It's very similar to why they brought in Cam Humphrey, even though they knew they had Dalton Sneed and at that time, Gresh Jensen.
Yeah.
Fill in the classes. But, or then you can also recruit the Jeff Choate model. Recruit nothing but quarterbacks, but maybe not traditional quarterbacks, and see where you can find a spot for them. I mean, I think there's 20-plus quarterbacks on the Montana State roster, but a lot of those guys are playing other positions, including first-team all-league guys like Braden Conkle, Troy Anderson, Nolan Askelson's a starter who used to play quarterback in high school. So, a lot of times, especially Montana kids, you can find to go both ways. But as far as this kid committing, I don't think it has any crazy impact on the program in the here and now, other than the fact that I do think that it's a really good idea to me to recruit the Northwest more prevalently than the Grizz have the last couple years. Bobby Hauck has always said, we want kids who can drive to games from where their hometown is so they can come see a game without it being their official visit. So then when they come on their official visit, we can show them campus, we can show them the program, we can show them the Champion Center, but then they can also experience game day with their parents and their families on their own. And that's kind of the way that Montana recruited so well last decade, was just leaving blocks of tickets for potential recruits and letting them recruit themselves a lot of times.
Yeah.
If you just go to watch the Grizzlies and watch the Grizz win in huge fashion, like they had a huge group of recruits in for the Southeastern Louisiana game. A bunch of those guys ended up signing because they were like, well, I want to win 73 to whatever in the playoffs. But I do think it's a good idea to get back into Oregon because for whatever reason, both Montana and Montana State decided to just wave the white flag in Washington and Oregon the last couple of years, and it's been a huge factor in Eastern Washington's rise. Eastern Washington's been able to get all the non-Oregon and Washington recruits and all the non-Pac-12 guys who are probably as good, if not better, than Big Sky level talent. The guys that are between Big Sky and Mountain West type talents, there's a ton of those guys in Washington. Maybe not quite as many in Oregon, but there's still some.
Yep.
And almost all of them have been going to Eastern Washington. So I think that the Grizz getting back into Oregon, which it seems like that's a priority, I think that's a good idea. And think about how much success Montana State has had the last couple of years in Washington, especially Western Washington. Jeff Choate brought a lot of his Washington ties over to Montana State, and they've done a good job. And I just think that it's beneficial to the programs twofold. You can get some guys who are maybe a little bit under-recruited, but are certainly good FCS players, maybe even a little bit more talented than that. But also, then you're making sure the Eastern Washington doesn't get all of them.
Yeah,
you got to have a battleground there. You can't just let all the kids in Washington go to Eastern Washington if they don't go to Washington State.
Well, if you're going to recruit Oregon and you're Montana, if it's a quarterback, okay, it's fine. But yeah, probably worth getting Dante Olson and Tyrone Holmes if you can.
No doubt.
All right, Coulter, let's quickly shift over to basketball just for a quick moment. We've talked a little bit about AA. Let's do some of the smaller classifications just in terms of where they're at right now. I think people, it's early on, but about 8, depending on who it is, 6 to 8 games into the season, and we've just started conference play in a lot of these places. But Hardin right now rolling through Class A. They're 3-0 in Southwest A, but they are 8-0 overall. Miles City in the Northwest, 6-1. and then Butte Central 7-0. So the top of Class A for boys basketball right now. One loss between three schools. I mean, very, very good in Class A, as you would expect. And those three are right now have separated themselves really from the pack.
Well, there's no question as to why. I mean, Famous Left Hand led Hardin to the state championship when he was a sophomore, and they lost in the state championship game last year. So, I mean, Famous Left Hand has the greatest name in all of high school basketball in Montana, and he also is the best player. I mean, he's a great player. He's a really great player. So it'll be interesting to see how his recruitment works out because he's been one of the most fun guys to watch in the state. So the fact that Hardin's off to a good start, not a surprising Class A.
In Class B right now, Harlem is 5-1 in 2B, and so they are. They're doing a nice job there as well. On the girls' side of things in Southwest A, Hamilton is 2-0, but they're 4-3 overall. So Southwest had a little bit of tough time out of conference. Haver 5-1, but they're 2-0 in conference. So is Sydney 2-0 there. But on the top of everybody, Billings Central 6-0, undefeated so far this season, 2-0 in conference. Hardin, by the way, 7-1. Their one loss to Billings Central, but Hardin also a very good team, 2-1 in conference, 7-1 in total.
Sometimes there's connections between fall sports and winter sports success. Sometimes there's disconnects, but I think that probably the strongest connection is between success in volleyball and success in basketball on the girls' side. Billings Central won. I know nothing about the Billings Central high school girls athletic department right now. Well, Billings Central won Class A for the third straight time in volleyball. The fact that they're undefeated in basketball, it makes complete sense because it's probably a similar group of young ladies.
Just a little peek into some high school stuff there for you. It's brought to us by the Farmers State Bank. Hey, all the bank you'll ever need under one roof. Checking, savings, investments, mortgage loans, personal loans, mobile banking options, internet banking, all of it. Farmers State Bank, your Montana bank since 1907. Take a quick break. On the other side, Greg Bell joins us. Covers the Seahawks for the Tacoma News Tribune. Knows more about this stuff than anybody else. You'll hear from him next.
Now, the Montana Club's happy hour features BOGO beverages. Our expertly mixed cocktails, microbrews, domestics, and wine are buy one, get one free 7 days a week from 3 to 5:30. Stop in on Friday for Montini night. Sip on a top shelf martini for only $6, 5:30 to close. When you've worked hard all day and are ready to relax, the Montana Club has got you covered with BOGO happy hour 7 days a week, 3 to 5:30 on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, pump it up.
Did you gain a little weight last year? Town Pump can help with that. They have Red Bull Energy 8.4 ounce, 3 for $5.33. And lettuce salads in the deli, only $3.99. Stop by your local Town Pump today. There's one just right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, oh yeah.
There's a saying, opportunity never knocks twice. When you're ready to take advantage of your next opportunity, look to your local bank. Opportunity Bank of Montana. Opportunity Bank offers options for mortgage loans, small business loans, equipment financing, agriculture, and more. Our experienced team can provide solutions to help you welcome your next big opportunity. There's nothing like the feeling of progress. So let's get started today. Come see us at your local Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense, excitement, and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in Montana. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Montana High School Association and the Montana Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
If you are hurt or disabled, you may be entitled to benefits from an insurance company or Social Security.
I'm Chris Helmer, an attorney at Clark Fork Law Offices. Our Missoula firm specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. There are many unknowns when injured or disabled. The other side is fighting hard. You should too. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. Longtime Montana Tech head football coach Chuck Morrell is leaving the Orediggers to join Kalen DeBauer's staff at Fresno State. Morrell has been the head man at Tech for 9 seasons, accruing a 52-44 record in the process to go with 2 playoff appearances. The Orediggers' longest postseason run was in 2016, in which they made the national quarterfinals, at which time Morrell was also the athletic director. He was a Frontier Coach of the Year 3 times during his tenure. Current AD at Montana Tech, Matt Steppen, said his search for a new football coach will be fast and efficient.
Following a red-hot shooting performance during a 2-game road trip, Montana's Kendall Manuel has been named the Big Sky Conference Player of the Week. The award is the first for Manuel. He's a senior from Billings, and it's the second straight week a Montana men's basketball player has been the Player of the Week, following fellow senior Syed Pridgett, who nabbed the award a week ago. Manuel had a great road trip. He shot 19 of 30 from the floor, including 13 of 16 against the Bears. He scored a career-high 30 points against Northern Colorado. 2
Montana golfers have signed letters of intent to play in college. 406 MT Sports is reporting that Hamilton's Bryce Reed and Callie Cannon of Polson have each signed letters of intent to golf at Dickinson State in North Dakota next fall. Reed was an all-conference 3 times while golfing for the Bronx and an all-stater twice. Cannon was twice named the outstanding female golfer at Polson.
ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Fork Law.
Welcome back. Seattle Seahawks heading to Lambeau Field. Well, they have not won since 1999. How about that? I think 0 of their last 8. Is that what it is in Lambeau Field? But the recent history against Green Bay, very different. Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana, across the state. On the TV side of things, outstanding to be with all of you. Boys and girls, if you missed anything in the first hour, check it out on the podcast. Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. It's available all the time, and it is there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. You can rate, subscribe, review, do all that stuff there, and we appreciate that. 329-1899, the phone number. All guests join us via the Regis Brothers RV phone line. And if you'd like to listen live, you can do so on the stream. The stream's available on the website, 1029ESPN.com. It is available thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. We are efforting Greg Bell of the Tacoma News Tribune. He covers the Seahawks for governs the Seahawks for the News Tribune. In fact, we'll go to him now. He is with us on the Regis Brothers RV phone line. And Greg Bell, welcome back to the show. Greg, hey, really appreciate you being here with us. How are you?
I'm well. Back for a day or two and out on the road again.
Exactly. You're making a lot of cross-country flights right now. Let's start with this Philadelphia game. Obviously, everything in this game changed quickly as soon as Carson Wentz goes down and can't come back. And then it was sort of game management time, it seemed like, from a play-calling standpoint. But what did you see in the wild card round for the Seattle Seahawks there in Philadelphia?
Well, I got no feeling in the press box that the Eagles were going to win the game at all the whole time, even when Wentz was in the game. And then when he went out, I didn't think they were going to score a touchdown. So it was just up to the Seahawks offense to make enough plays, and they did. Marshawn Lynch's touchdown run through 3 Eagles, and then the all-effort DK Metcalf touchdown, diving, getting up to his feet, sprinting, touchdown. Those are the 2 plays they needed. That's all they needed. They're going to need more plays than that in Green Bay on Sunday. Playing Aaron Rodgers is going to be a little different than Josh McCown, obviously. But the defense, I didn't think played particularly well, but played well enough to beat a weakened team. Going into the game, I thought that the Eagles weren't going to be that much of a threat offensively. They were even less so without their starting quarterback, of course.
You know, When it comes to DK Metcalf, he's a guy who, there was some high expectations for, but a lot of question marks because maybe the production wasn't there at Ole Miss. But Chris Collinsworth was effusive of DK Metcalf in the broadcast on Sunday. How much has he improved, though, over the course of the year from, starting as a rookie to the place that he is now?
He's been exactly the same. He really hasn't. He hasn't really improved a ton. He wowed everybody from the first minicamp, and he was starting from the first weekend. I mean, he came 19 days off of knee surgery and started the opener, and has been starting ever since. He had a wall late in the season, early December, of fumbling the ball, of reaching out and trying to make extra plays at the goal line and losing the ball. Other than that, he's been remarkably steady for a he was far advanced and more so than they thought he was in route running. Mississippi didn't ask him to do much in college. You mentioned the production numbers. He missed an entire season because of injury. Last year, his college career ended in October because of a fracture in his neck, and some people said he would never play football again. And then when he did play, Ole Miss just sent him on go route to pass because he was faster, bigger, and stronger than anybody. They never really asked him to do more than that. The Seahawks have asked him to do what an NFL receiver has to do, all the routes, and he has marveled. He's really been a lot better than they thought when they got him at doing everything. Now he's become a very good blocker. As big as he is, he can be an outstanding blocker on the edge. But the intricacies of route running, of catching the ball away from his body, of cuts, of coming back to the ball, of switching up his releases against defensive backs, all the things that veteran receivers do, he's been doing since the first rookie minicamp. And they didn't think when they drafted him he was that good. They knew he was a freakish athlete. They didn't know how polished a receiver he has been since day one.
He's definitely exceeded my expectations as well. I got two questions for you, Greg. First of all, I want to know just overall, what do you think of the NFL playoff format? Because you made the comment about the Eagles, no one really in the press box having any inclination that the Eagles ever had a chance to win. I've been thinking that since week 10. Whoever came out of the NFC East, no chance in the playoffs. It just seemed as if there was several better teams in the North, the West, and maybe even the South than there was in the East. What do you think of just the format where division winners get home games, even if they are a lackluster team like the Eagles?
I'm fine with that. It comes and goes. There's some years that it's weighed the other way, and you're just scrapping for 8 and 8 teams getting in as wild cards. This has been an anomaly year with double-digit win teams. I'm fine with the playoff format and how they value divisions. Division titles meaning more.
Greg Bell joining us at GBell Seattle on Twitter. He covers the Seattle Seahawks for the Tacoma News Tribune, does an absolutely phenomenal job with them there. Since the last time we talked, it's been a little while. What have you seen out of the Seattle Seahawks in general as a team? Obviously, they lose, we know the top 3 running backs, and they bring in Turbin and Marshawn, and that has certainly infused enthusiasm, and Marshawn Lynch, I think, is at moments looked, pretty good, even though his touches are slim. But where is this team at in general right now to you? Are they in a good place as they head into Lambeau Field this Sunday?
Well, it's a place they haven't won since 1999, so I can't say it's a good place. They lost 8 in a row there, but they're totally dependent on pass rush and pressure on quarterbacks. Quandre Diggs changes them defensively. They're so much better in the back and allowing Bradley McDougald to play up close to the line of scrimmage when Diggs is in there. He transforms them. But they are totally dependent on getting the quarterbacks having to rush and get the ball out quickly, and they don't always have that. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best in the world ever at getting the ball out quickly and accurately. That's their test in Green Bay on Sunday, and we'll see if they can do that. That to me is that. When the defense doesn't get pressure on the quarterback, they give up yards and points, and they will give up plenty to Aaron Rodgers if they don't affect him.
Last question for you then, Greg. How would you gauge just the overall confidence and mentality of this team as they head to Lambeau?
Well, they're confident because they're 8-1 on the road, but they are leery. I mean, this is, I think, the toughest draw in the playoffs at Lambeau against Aaron Rodgers. History shows it's not easy to do, and the Seahawks haven't done it since 1999. But they are confident being on the road. They have to be, because that's where they're going to be now for the rest of the playoffs, unless Minnesota hint they win this week. I think their confidence is a lot better than it would have been if they were, say, a 500 team on the road and 8-0 at home, or 8-1 at home. So they have that going for them. But, again, if they don't affect Aaron Rodgers, they're not going to win Sunday.
Yeah, and sorry, Greg, I just got to ask you one more question, though, too, because the history of this matchup is such a bizarre one. I mean, the NFC Championship game that was a complete miracle that Seattle pulled out. You have the Fail Mary during the regular season, the we want the ball and we're going to score game and all of that. Like, what is it about Seattle Green Bay that has delivered such memorable moments?
Well, the quarterback play mainly. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Matt Hasselbeck, Brett Favre will give you great games. And then the links to the teams, Mike Holmgren, John Schneider grew up there, was a Packers assistant GM before he got the job here. There's a lot of history that goes between the teams. They know each other a lot in the front offices. And it's the quality of play. And the 16-0 comeback in the NFC title game here in Seattle, the miraculous win the Seahawks pulled off to make Super Bowl 49. A lot of history, you're right. It's lopsided, though, in Green Bay. That's what the Seahawks are going against this weekend.
Well, Greg, we certainly appreciate it. Again, on Twitter, @GBellSeattle. Go follow him. Nobody doing it better than Greg Bell for the Tacoma News-Tribune. Where can they read your stuff, Greg?
I appreciate it. That's thenewstribune.com online.
Absolutely. Travel safe up there to Lambeau Field and all the best, okay?
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Greg. Thank you. Greg Bell joining us, covers the Seahawks for the Tacoma News-Tribune. And yeah, I mean, the history of this is an amazing one. He's right. I mean, to go, Matt Hasselbeck and Russell. Here's the thing. Matt Hasselbeck is remembered as a decent quarterback, I think. Mm-hmm. He's so woefully underappreciated in terms of what he was as a quarterback, how smart he was, and frankly, a lot of the teams that he had to have around him. He also, I think, is remembered early in his career, he was just flat bad, and everybody thought Mike Holmgren was outside of his mind to keep this guy around that was losing football games left and right, throwing interceptions. But he developed him much the same as he did with Brett Favre in Green Bay, where you remember he was ready to yank Brett Favre out of the game and then changes. No, okay, let's easy. And what Matt Hasselbeck became, because he didn't have all the physical gifts. I mean, Matt Hasselbeck couldn't throw a ball 75% of the distance that Brett Favre could ever. But what he was as a leader, and then eventually as a thinker of the game and able to see it and do it, remarkable. And so to go from Matt Hasselbeck to Russell Wilson and go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and those 2 decades of teams playing against each other when the times arose. And by the way, it often is in the playoffs because they're not in the same division against one another. Completely remarkable, and it is delivered, again, some of the most memorable moments that we've ever seen. Who knows what this is? Because, again, I really do think this is an uphill battle this week for the Seattle Seahawks. As much as they are always playing in close games, as much as they always, are finding some magic in there, which I think they're going to have some moments where they pull something out. But as Greg Bell just told us, where is Seattle? What does Seattle have to do defensively? They have to get pressure. Well, guess what? One of the best offensive lines in football turns out to be Green Bay's. And if you have to pressure a quarterback, and you need a quarterback who gets the ball out quick, Aaron Rodgers is still one of the best in the business at doing that very thing. So I think Green Bay is going to score some points, and I'm not so sure that the Seahawks, especially with the running game that they have, which is what they have built this entire thing on, are going to be able to keep up. And we still don't know about Dwayne Brown, Mikey Iupati up front on the offensive line.
It's so interesting. Football is the thing that dominates the talk radio airwaves like we're on right now, the sports talk radio airwaves, because football is so intricate and strategic, and there's so much you can analyze. And when we spend so much of our time breaking down college football, and there's such diversity in the identity of college football teams, schematically, personnel-wise, culture, just in the Big Sky Conference, you have every train of thought and line of thinking that you can imagine. So every matchup is a distinct matchup. And it's not to say that the diversity doesn't exist in the NFL, but when it comes down to now forward, talking about the Elite 8, the final 8 teams in the league, 4 teams in the AFC, 4 teams in the NFC. Everybody is going to straight sell out to stop the run. There's no not stopping the run. You're not going to have a 200-yard rushing game unless there's some sort of anomaly or some sort of broken play or some sort of long run. You're going to be scrapping your way to get 4 yards a carry at best. Even if you're the Baltimore Ravens or the Minnesota Vikings or the San Francisco 49ers, you are going to be scrapping your way to get to 4 yards a carry. No question. And so then it always comes down to 3 factors, right? It comes down to quarterback play, the takeaway battle, and rushing the passer. Mm-hmm. And this is where guys like Jadeveon Clowney, we know what he can do, but he's done it far less than he should do it throughout his career.
Right.
But he still could do it.
He could.
You never know when you're going to have.
He's going to have that game.
When he's going to go nuts. But you also never know who's your boy, Darius Shepard? Not Darius Shepard. Who's your boy, the edge guy?
Darius Smith.
Darius Smith.
Yeah.
The biggest snub of the All-Pros.
Right.
I mean, he should have been an All-Pro this yeir. Every time I watched him on TV, I was looking him up. Who is this guy? What is it? Where did they find this guy?
I believe that it was Devontae Adams who just retweeted Za'Darius lifting weights and doing the thing with the chains on the end of the weights and just said, "Thank you, voters, for snubbing him as All-Pro, because look out what you're going to get in this postseason."
Totally. So
we'll see.
When you're breaking down this matchup, just in terms of the X's and O's, both teams are going to be able to at least keep the other team's run game in check. You can almost guarantee it.
Right.
And so whose offensive line plays better against whose elite pass rushers? Can Jadeveon Clowney and Ziggy Ansah actually be elite? Can they live up to their potential?
Will Ziggy Ansah even play? I mean,
will Ziggy Ansah even play? Right.
Yeah.
And is Za'Darius Smith going to have the advantage, especially with the question marks on the offensive line? And then which quarterback either carries his team to victory or makes the mistakes that leads his team to a loss? It's pretty cut and dry this time of year. And I really think that those are the three factors, but there's no way to predict how any of those three factors are going to play out. It really just shows. It really comes down to who shows up to play.
Let me ask you this, just in the context of these other games. The two AFC games are both 10-point spreads. Okay?
Really?
The Ravens are -10 against the Titans, and the Chiefs are -10 against the Texans.
Yikes.
The Packers are -4 over the Seahawks, and then the 49ers are a 7-point favorite over your Vikings. Which of these teams, though, do you think has, and by the way, it's all the home teams that are favored, and they're all the bye teams, so it's okay, it's fine. Which of those teams, the lower seeds, do you think has the best chance of actually winning outright?
Actually winning outright?
Yeah, of actually moving on to the conference championship game.
Man, I think either of the NFC teams, honestly. I mean, the Niners are great, but the Niners are a team of this year.
I really think it's the Vikings.
Right, because the Niners have had a great year, but the Niners are a young team. That this iteration of the Niners, they don't have the experience. And it's not as if Captain Kirk and the Vikings do, but some of the Vikings guys do have playoff experience. Very few of the Niners guys do.
I mean, conventional wisdom says it's Seattle, and in a lot of ways it should be, but I just think all the things that you just said, the only category that I think is a coin flip even is the turnovers, which I generally think is a coin flip in basically every football game, like who's going to win the turnover battle, you know? But ultimately, all the other matchup stuff, I think favors the Green Bay Packers in this football game. I really do. And when you talk about, you want to run the football, and Travis Homer is your starting running back now. And, he runs hard, but he's not even in the realm of a Chris Carson or a Rashad Penny even.
No.
Compared to what he is. And as fun as I mean, Marshawn Lynch, man, I tweeted out Marshawn Lynch 16 seconds of pure gold post game, by the way. Go check it out at Gus Tootell. But he is I love him, man. He's one of my favorite players, period. And he's still good. He's still getting it done 6 to 8 times a game. Right? I mean, that's you're just not getting it there. So I don't know. I think Green Bay is actually in a really good spot, even though they haven't been, again, nearly as impressive as you would. They've been the least impressive of the 4-bye teams to me this season, even though they're 13-3. And Seattle was a whisper away from being the champion of the NFC West and the 3 seed and all of that. Didn't quite happen. So this feels like it's closer, but I think on the matchup actually really favors Green Bay, especially in Lambeau, especially after a bye, and being far healthier than what the Seattle Seahawks are. So that's why I think the Vikings have a better chance. I'm just not prepared to go to sleep on the Tennessee Titans just yet. I mean, I certainly expect Baltimore to win the game, but that big win could be the Super Bowl for the Tennessee Titans, and if it is, they're going to get crushed in Baltimore. It also could be the start of one of those runs, which you see from time to time in the NFL postseason, where the right team gets hot at the right time, and you never think it's going to be the Tennessee Titans, but here they are. With the best running back in football and at least by yardage, and the change at quarterback. I mean, what they've been since Ryan Tannehill took over.
Yeah.
I mean, compare this football team from Tannehill forward. They stack up against everybody. And that's the thing that I think people kind of forget about.
Well, and Mike Vrabel has done an incredible job.
Totally.
You can tell that those guys play with an edge because of him. I mean,
Yes.
attitude reflects leadership, and he's bestowed that upon them. And, I mean, that matchup just comes up down to straight up Action Jackson. I mean, what do you do to contain Lamar Jackson? Because if you can contain him, their offense is you don't want to say pedestrian because they led the NFL in rushing yards. I mean, I think they actually even threatened the NFL rushing yard record. They might have even set it in a single season. But if you can put the handcuffs on Jackson, all of a sudden it doesn't look nearly as daunting, but that's way, way, way easier said than done.
Of course, Jackson's worst game of his NFL career was his only playoff game of his NFL career against the Chargers last season. And so, I mean, not that there's a ton of carryover there, but who knows?
Would you be surprised by those spreads?
Let's talk about it after this. Okay. We got a bunch of surprises. We talked about surprises last to end the show yesterday. We really didn't get through it as much as we would like to. We'll continue on that, and we'll talk about where the spreads are and where we think they should be right after this. Hey, the Polaris New Year's sales event is on now, and it's time to find your perfect ride at Kurtz Polaris. With financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months and savings of up to $3,500, Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and on Highway 83 in Sealy. The mountains are full of snow, and Kurtz has all the best machines, apparel, and accessories to take full advantage of the season. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. The most fun you can have in snow. Kurtz Polaris. Winter awaits.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes and shocks and wheels and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call. 406-640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
It's easy to make healthy choices with Florence Coffee's variety of organic milk alternatives for your favorite beverage. Whether you have dietary needs or you just want to try something different, Florence Coffee carries organic oat, soy, and almond milks. Enjoy that smooth Florence Coffee flavor with milk alternatives. Stop by any of our locations in Western Montana or go to florencecoffeeco.com.
Florence Coffee Company.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense, excitement, and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in Montana. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Montana High School Association and the Montana Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save.
Feedthepig.org.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Evening as it is. Here's a little sports news for you. Longtime Montana Tech head coach Chuck Morrell is leaving the Ore Diggers to join Kalen DeBauer's staff at Fresno State. Morrell has been the head man at Tech for 9 seasons, accruing a 52-44 record while he was there, including 2 playoff appearances in 2016, all the way to the national quarterfinals. Morrell was named the Frontier Coach of the Year 3 times during his tenure. Right now, Montana Tech Athletic Director Matt Steppen has said his search for a new football coach will be fast and efficient.
Montana senior Kendall Manuel, the Big Sky Conference Men's Basketball Player of the Week. That is the first Big Sky Player of the Week for Manuel in his career, a senior from Billings, as well as the second straight week a Montana Men's Basketball Player has been named the Player of the Week in the league. Senior side Pridgett nabbed the award a week ago. Manuel earned the award by and large based on 30 points at career high against Northern Colorado, although Montana lost the game in Greeley.
2 Montana golfers have signed letters of intent to play in college. 406 MT Sports is reporting that Hamilton's Bryce Reed and Callie Cannon of Polson have each signed letters of intent to golf at Dickinson State in North Dakota next fall. Reed was an all-state all-conference 3 times while golfing for the Bronx and was named to the all-state team twice. Cannon was twice selected the outstanding female golfer at Polson. Going into this next weekend, the world of the NFL. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you here on a Tuesday evening. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Thanks for spending some of it with us on your radios, on your TVs, on YouTube. Or if you're on the podcast at a later time, well, thank you for being there now. Okay? Appreciate that. Coulter, you asked me going into the break, do any of these spreads surprise me? A little bit and a little bit not. I think as far as the spreads go, they're all about where they should be. I don't...
Really?
Yeah.
7-point spread in the NFL is huge.
It isn't, though. It's not like it used to be. It's such a higher scoring game than it once was, and there are. It's still a big spread. Hey, the 10-point spreads are especially in a playoff game, it's significant. I also think there's clearly the 2 best teams in the AFC and everybody else. I mean,
I guess I would have thought that the Seahawks Packers spread would be between 2.5 and 4. It's 4. Mm-hmm. I would have thought that the Vikings 49ers would have been 5.5 or 6.5, not 7, just not a full 7. And I would have expected the other 2 to be 7.5, not 10. There's almost a little bit higher than I thought.
Yeah, I guess here's the thing to me: the Chiefs Texans. I'm right on that thing. I think everybody believes in Andy Reid over Bill O'Brien. I think people believe in Patrick Mahomes over Deshaun Watson, although if you watch Deshaun Watson, I mean, what a play. I mean, the play of the weekend was the Deshaun Watson not sack, throw for 40 yards, kick the field goal, walk it off. I mean, that was the play of the weekend right there. Unbelievable. Better than Kirk Cousins, better than, Kirk Cousins the second time to Rudolph. The Titans-Ravens one is the one that I am a little bit... I could see being smaller. In fact, it opened smaller than that. I think it opened at 9 and moved to 10 since that time. But I think the Titans are playing really well. I think they're underrated, and I think that the Ravens have been outstanding all season long and are probably the team to beat. Well, I don't know. I would put I'm going to take the home team if they end up matching up between, Kansas City and Baltimore, which the game would be in Baltimore, obviously. But only because it's a home game. I mean, that's a pick-em game to me as far as I'm concerned, Ravens-Chiefs, if that were to come to pass. But I think the Titans are a little bit better than people think. And I also think the Ravens are susceptible in the sense that you kind of pointed out, and that is, in order for their offense to work, it has to be Jackson getting it done, and he has this entire season. I mean, he's been as good as we've ever seen doing what he does. The best ever. So I expect him to be really good again, but especially with the question marks surrounding Mark Ingram. He went down with that non-contact, calf injury. No structural damage, so we're told, or whatever. But he's also absolutely huge in the offense of this team, which has been the best offense in football. So I think there's a couple of questions about Baltimore that still need to be proven, especially in a playoff setting. So the 10 points is a big number to me. But that said, Baltimore, Tennessee, right? I mean, you're the 14-2 Baltimore Ravens at home off a bye against the 9-7 Tennessee Titans. In that respect. Does that surprise me? No, not particularly.
I guess it's just surprising because of the matchup. Because in a league where this game's going to have so few possessions because these two teams are more dedicated to running the ball than anybody else that's left. Really,
yeah. I mean, than what Seattle wanted to be.
How many passes did the Titans complete last week? 2. I'm serious. I think that the official stats. I don't know. I guess Ryan Tannehill had 8 completions. He was 8 of 15. Sorry, I was looking at the games played column. No, he was 8 of 15 for 72 yards. But I mean, if you're going to run the ball 34 of your 56 offensive plays, you have a chance to not lose by 10, even if you get destroyed.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, I
agree with you on the Chiefs spread.
Yeah,
I think that the Chiefs Texans 10 points. 9 or 10, that's right where I would have had it.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just really hard to beat a team that's going to be full all in on run the ball, play defense. I mean, Derrick Henry had 34 carries last week.
Yeah. I must say I do like the Vikings. Like, if you're going to ask me to pick the game against the spread, I really like Minnesota for it to be a full 7. And if it was 6, it wouldn't have been crazy to me. But it's not crazy to me at 7 either because, I mean, the San Francisco 49ers are maybe the baddest defense left in this tournament. I mean, they're
so that's the one they play.
No, I'm taking San Francisco on that.
Who's else is in the conversation? It's San Fran and Minnesota.
Sure, no,
who's left?
But San Francisco is better than Minnesota defensively. They're better.
They are. Well, obviously, I mean, they're the best defense.
But you know what's not clear, and this is what's crazy because this is the only matchup where this might be the case, where it's not clear that Kirk Cousins is the worst of the 2 quarterbacks.
Oh, no question.
I mean, any of the other games, Kirk Cousins is a distant second to whoever the other guy is, except for the San Francisco 49ers.
Who has more to prove, Kirk Cousins or Jimmy Garoppolo?
Well, Kirk Cousins, because Jimmy Garoppolo is only this is only his second year as a starter, and he was injured for most of last year. So
is this his first career playoff start?
Yes, I believe it is. And obviously, he's been around the playoffs and in New England and so on, but. This is a big moment, and it is big for Jimmy Garoppolo because I think he has been good, but not as good as people wanted him to be or thought he could be or projected, all that kind of stuff. But this is still, even with the big week last weekend, it's not as if all of a sudden, you complete 2 passes, and now everything that's happened in your 10-year career no longer is real if you're Kirk Cousins. So I think this is still bigger for Kirk Cousins than it is for Jimmy Garoppolo.
It's so fascinating to me, too, the war of attrition down the stretch. The Vikings and the Seahawks both got really banged up down the stretch. The Vikings made the sacrifice to not play certain guys the last couple weeks of the season, including Dalvin Cook, in hopes that they could still get into the playoffs, even if it meant having to go on the road. And they basically traded that for having those guys back when the playoff game rolled around. I know Seattle wasn't in that situation, really. There wasn't really nothing they could do when Chris Carson went out because he was just going to be out. I mean, he's injured enough that he's just out for the next foreseeable future, probably. I mean, would he be back if he made the Super Bowl? What did they say, 6 to 8 weeks? And how long ago was that injury?
Who?
Chris Carson.
I think Chris Carson is out. He's
right.
Yeah, he's out.
So that one you can't really mitigate, but it's interesting because a lot of times teams they do bring guys back too soon to make sure they get into the playoffs, but then that comes back to bite them, whereas the Vikings sacrificed not playing Dalvin Cook.
And lost the last 2 games.
They lost
right,
the last 2 games and didn't look good. But then when he comes back, they look so much better.
Changes everything. Absolutely.
And it'll be interesting to watch because I maintain that talent-wise, the Vikings are there with a lot of these other teams. How do their premier players play?
Yeah.
Specifically, how does their quarterback play? But, I mean, Xavier Rhodes has had a really tough season. He looked better last week against the Saints. He did. I mean, when you're guarding Michael Thomas, you're going to get beat sometimes. But he looked more competitive than he has.
Here's the ironic thing to me. If you're a 6 seed and you win a road game against a 3 in the wild card, everybody's going to talk about house money. But to me, it's a much more real thing with Minnesota than it is with Tennessee, because the Tennessee-New England game felt like such a vendetta and a desire on the part of Vrabel, and good for him, to go back and slam that door shut. And the handshake, it's too good to be true.
When he was just declining penalties, the whole penalty situation where he was just doing it straight up to make Bill Belichick mad.
That's right. How's this taste? No, it's glorious. It was glorious. But that's why I wonder how much can you launch out of that into the next week.
Right.
Whereas Minnesota, they're riding the wave right now. And also, they're good, man. Like, they're legitimately a good. It's not like the up-and-comer, whatever, found a way to upstage Big Brother. I mean, they sort of did, because I still think New Orleans is the best team in the NFC. I really do. But now that that's done, it's not a talent gap between San Francisco and Minnesota. It's been a performance gap at times. And so, and frankly, maybe a coaching gap. I mean, Kyle Shanahan, I think, heard a lot of talk that he didn't want to hear about Sean McVay. And he, this year, I think, had his own axe to grind about young, brilliant, offensive-minded coach and the whole thing. You know?
Man, and that's such a great point, because I said this on the radio a couple weeks ago, the way that pro sports goes in flux, and now with so much turnover from the top down, whether it's the coach to the personnel on the roster, you can completely remake the identity of your franchise. No longer lingers for years at a time or decades. I mean, forever, the Steelers had the same identity for 50 years. Mm-hmm. And by and large, they kind of still do, but not as much as they've gravitated away from it a little bit. We'll see where they go from here. But these 49ers, compared to like the Bill Walsh 49ers, they're not even in the same world.
Yes.
But I also think that Shanahan deserves so much credit for, one, being so steadfast in his way of operating, but two, he's not getting enough credit. It's so easy to see Jared Goff throw the ball all over the place and have 3,000-yard receivers and, Mr. Touchdown Todd Gurley. When the Rams were rolling, it's so apparent how explosive they were. What the Niners have done is nowhere near as sexy. But to me, it's amazing. And if I was to pick my second favorite team just based on how they play, it's the Niners, man. I love the 4-back system. I love the fact that Jurasek is their dude. They build the whole thing around a fullback. How awesome is that? They got one of the great tight ends. One of the most ferocious tight ends we've seen in the league in a minute.
Might be my favorite player.
I mean, he's awesome,
with the reemergence of Marshawn Lynch, now I got to flip a coin. But George Kittle's as good as it gets to me.
As far as like a future pro wrestling trio, how good is Jurasek, George Kittle, and Nick Bosa? I mean, those three guys are they're so sweet. I love them. But you're right. Shanahan deserves a ton of credit because he's been less sexy than McVay, but he's been so creative in the way that they've operated the entire team. So I want to ask you this.
Yeah.
We see this narrative that's so prevalent in pro sports, particularly the NBA and the NFL, where you have this window as a group of guys to make your hay, to win your titles, or at least be knocking on the door. And that window is usually 3 to 5 years long. And we've seen it. Some teams have been outside of that, like the San Antonio Spurs. Their window was more like 12 years where they were really true contenders. But so often within your window, you need to fail before you can succeed. Or failure is then followed by the ultimate success. And we've seen it the Seahawks are an example, right?
For sure.
We've seen teams that have lost the Super Bowl and come back and won the Super Bowl. So often teams that win the Super Bowl, it's so hard to get back to the Super Bowl, though, right? The Rams are kind of the example of the team where they got there, but they couldn't maintain the level. But when you look at the 8 teams that are left, the Seahawks, particularly because of one guy, Russell Wilson, are in that window. The Packers are in that window. Mm-hmm. They've been here, they've failed, but they know what the stage is like. They're not going to be blinded by the bright lights. To a certain extent, Kirk Cousins is subtracting him from the situation, but the rest of this Vikings core, from Everson Griffin to Harrison Smith to Xavier Rhodes to Anthony Barr to Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs on offense, they've been a part of this recent pretty good run by the Vikings. And then you have the teams that are new. But as David just said, the Packers have a rookie head coach. Yep. So that's a new factor. But then you have these these teams that are sort of new to the dance. Second playoff appearance in 3 years for the Titans, but they've been this 9-7 team that gets in. But the Niners they were awful last year. This is brand new, being the number 1 seed. Right. The Ravens, this is brand new. Not in the scope of their franchise, but in this little window, it's brand new. So do you believe in the notion that the playing field's a little bit more level when you're a team that's been there before?
Yes. I think that almost always the ascending teams, the ascending young teams, they don't finish the deal ultimately. They're not winning Super Bowls. I mean, the closest you could say to that, might have been the Packers the last time they won, with a very young Aaron Rodgers, a very young Clay Matthews. And, it's so funny because as soon as a team wins the Super Bowl and you go, look at how many young guys they have, and it's like they're the odds-on favorite to win the next year, the following day, and all of that, but it's never the case. I think San Francisco, if for no other reason than that very point, is a team that is going to take a lump that they don't expect to take because they haven't been there before by and large.
And that's what I think is the most interesting part about analyzing this stuff, is that on paper right now, what we've seen the last 4 months, the Niners are the best team in the NFC, and they're one of the 2 best teams in the NFL. And you are what your record says you are. But there's just those moments. Honestly, the analysis that I'm trying to prod out of this whole remaining playoff field isn't going to be on full display until the NFC Championship game, because you don't really have you have the 2 teams that have been fighting for it the longest playing each other in Lambeau Field.
Yep.
But that dynamic, when the Niners are playing the Packers or the Seahawks, or when the Vikings are playing the Packers or the Seahawks, that dynamic is going to be so profound to me. And it's the same thing on the other side. Although the Chiefs' window has been a lot smaller, the Chiefs have still been there and been disappointed before. How does that match up with the Ravens if those 2 are to meet in the AFC Championship?
The one team that I think has the chance to break through, and look, it's going to be semi brand new no matter who wins. Like the most known team that could win the thing, probably in terms of recent success, is the Seahawks. Right. But basically, it's going to be somebody pretty new because it ain't the Patriots.
Yeah, totally.
Right. The one team though that I think is prepped potentially for a breakthrough to me is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
I mean, they have all the talent to do it. They got a quarterback that is from another planet. I mean, and
he hasn't had his oh my gosh, my jaw's on the floor in a little while. He's been really good. But wait till but what happens if he has one of those 450-yard 5 touchdown games like he had last year?
Totally. And also Andy Reid. Like the Andy Reid factor of having, been so often the bridesmaid, and such a respected coach and easily the best coach to never win one and all that kind of stuff. And he's been there. He's been there over and over. But this team, also with the field that remains, playing at home against Houston, things falling in their favor with a Miami defeat of New England on the last day of the regular season. I mean, all that stuff starts to conspire and you start to go, okay, I really think that they'll have a look. Now, they would have to win, presumably, in Baltimore to get there. But nothing would surprise me about the run that the Chiefs. I mean, the only teams that would shock me if they were at the end would be the Texans and the Titans. I just don't see either of those. But it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it wouldn't stun me to the ground if even the Vikings were there.
Oh, no, not at all.
And certainly the Seahawks as well. So anybody in the NFC to me that's left is a real player in this thing. I think the top two seeds are going to battle it out in Baltimore at the end. Everything that happened this past weekend, there was, I don't know, a list of a dozen things that were ranging between surprising and flatly stunning. What was the most so? A continued conversation next.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up.
After a hard day at the office, there's nothing like kicking back with a cold one. Town Pump's got just what you need. Bud, Miller, and Coors 12-pack cans, 2 for $20. And you can mix and match. Need that snack to go along with it? Doritos Double XL chips, 2 for $6. Town Pump, right down the road.
Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Colter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
If it matters to Missoula, it matters to us. Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
The Patriots lose. Kirk Cousins being clutch. Cowboys hiring Mike McCarthy. What's the most surprising thing of the weekend? Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Broadcasting live on a Tuesday evening. Thanks for being here. We appreciate that. If you missed anything in the show, check it out on the podcast. Podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Transistor, all of that stuff. Rate, review, listen. We appreciate that. It's available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Golden, we got a long list here of things that are or were very surprising over the course of the weekend. I don't want to go through each and every one of these things. I want you to tell me the thing that you are most surprised by.
Well, one confession I will make is that I was completely wrong about DK Metcalf. I said that I thought he was
clunky,
a one-dimensional, clunky, non-diverse.
He kind of is clunky.
Yeah, I think I made the statement that he can't be backpedaling and high point a ball, and he did exactly what I said he could not do in a playoff game.
And scored a touchdown.
In front of my eyes. Yeah. That's his definition of being wrong. Yeah. I mean, some of these other ones. I'm not ready to affirm Derrick Henry as the number one dude in the league quite yet. I think that he's in the mix. He's also a player that's proved me wrong in terms of my opinion of him. He's also aided by a team that is as dedicated to running the football as anybody in the league.
No doubt.
He has changed the way he runs the football. I mean, if you ever wanted to know how important pad level is in the NFL, Derrick Henry had terrible pad level when he first got to the league. He does no longer have terrible pad level. 260 pounds looks pretty darn good when you get your pads down.
Marshawn Lynch has awful pad level.
Oh, man.
Until the point of contact.
But, the Carson Wentz stuff that's going around, I mean, most often when I'm driving around during the day, Will Cain's on the radio. Will Cain hates Carson Wentz. I don't really know why.
Because he's an Eagle, that's why.
Well, right, and Will Cain thinks that Dak Prescott's good. He's not. And he thinks that Carson Wentz sucks. That's not true either. But this whole narrative that Carson Wentz can't hang, I mean, he got thrown on his head by Jadeveon Clowney. That doesn't make you injury prone. It means you got hit by one of the most ferocious guys in the league, right. And it just happened to you just happened to get hurt.
It's a singular event. That's right. Here's the thing to me. By the way, my biggest surprise is probably the fact that Joe Judge just got hired by the New York Giants to be their head football coach.
I don't even know who that is.
That's what's shocking about it. The wide receivers coach from the New England Patriots.
Yikes.
So, for whatever that's worth, that's surprising. I would say this. The fact that the Patriots lost in and of itself is not the most surprising thing of the weekend. In fact, you could see like some susceptibility in the cracks in the foundation, and again, the vendetta game with Vrabel and all of that kind of stuff. But the fact that it actually happened, and the fact that Tom Brady in a home playoff game finished off the season with a pick six, and the fact that the whole, like, when you thought that this was a point where the Patriots might just go ahead and go 40-0 and go, everybody shut up now, actually had all of the negative things come to fruition in a moment and go sayonara and not even into the second round of the playoffs, to say nothing of having played in the wild card round. It is such an odd thing to look at a postseason tournament and actually notice the absence of a team. And that's how I'm feeling about the New England Patriots right now. I'm not a hater of the New England Patriots, but I love the fact that they're out. Because it makes everything seem so much more open. This sense of inevitability that has seemingly always been there is no longer there, and it's actually not there. It's not just not there because they're, quote, not as good. They're literally not playing football, and that is on a sort of broad narrative scale. That is stunning. It is a shocking development that it would go Miami, Tennessee in Foxborough in back-to-back weeks to be the daggers that potentially ended that.
It's not over yet.
It ain't over.
Have
yet.
you watched? You don't
it ain't over.
You
yet.
don't have HBO, right?
No.
Have you watched The Art of Coaching yet? It's the Nick Saban, Bill Belichick documentary.
I have not. I'm aware of it. I will watch it. But
Great.
I've not
It's
seen
great. But like the sit-down talk that they have, where they talk about the two main thesis of the conversation is that how hard it is to maintain a standard when you are the standard, and how hard it is to stay on top of the mountain when you've summited it not once, not twice, but many times.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, I mean, the Patriots have actually only won back-to-back titles twice.
Right.
They've just kept coming back for more.
But they've been in, yeah.
Excuse me, they've only won back-to-back titles the one time, like 2 years in a row, 2003, 2004. Those are the only when they went back-to-back. Yeah. They come back and win when they don't win. And oftentimes the losses come, not oftentimes, every year this decade, the losses have come in either the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl.
That's right.
So that's why this one is a little bit more shocking. But what do we know about the Patriots more than any other franchise? As soon as you start to count them out, as soon as there's controversy surrounding their team, as soon as they have something to prove, They go win the Super Bowl the next year.
But this is my point, is that they had all of that stuff swirling, and then they didn't. All that stuff was there, and they failed miserably against two teams that, it wasn't the Ravens. It wasn't the Chiefs that did them in. They didn't go all of a sudden and have Patrick Mahomes go epic on them, and that's, the explanation. The explanation is that they played poorly and got and Tom Brady threw a pick six. And by the way, this is not the end of the Patriots. I completely agree with you on that. As long as Bill Belichick's the coach and GM there, they will be good. But this very well could have been the last Patriots game that Tom Brady plays. I think it's a 50-50 chance that he's back in New England. I think it's a 100% chance that he's back in the league.
So interesting. The thing about it is that it's so easy to look at them for what they've accomplished over the last 20 years and say that this season was a failure. But if you actually just look at their personnel, defensively they were elite. Offensively they were not good.
No, bad.
And
wide receiver in particular, though.
Exactly. But sometimes the confluence of events makes it so that you have such an uphill battle that not even Tom Brady can overcome it. They didn't expect Rob Gronkowski to retire, and he just abruptly walked away. No one expected Antonio Brown to just lose his marbles.
Yeah.
Flush him down the toilet. He's out. And and they take a risk on Josh Gordon. You know what comes with Josh Gordon, but then it doesn't work out. And there's 3 household names that are not playing.
Totally.
Julian Edelman's older. I don't know.
And injured, by
I don't know what happened to Sonny Michel.
Well, we should add this. Their offensive line is middle of the road to bottom third of the road offensive line. And so, Sonny Michel I think is still a very good running back, but clearly, was the worse for wear the second half of the season, which again is such a contradictory reality to what we know about the Patriots. The Patriots always start off okay and then end on top. This year they started off pristine. Who's going to touch this team? Is this the best iteration of the Patriots we've seen? And then they fell apart down the stretch. That doesn't happen, and it did.
Absolutely, though, the biggest surprise on this entire list of all the options that we have is Kirk Cousins. No question, man. There's no question. Nerditron Kirk Cousins stepped up in the clutch, made an enormous throw to win a playoff game on the road against what I thought was the most complete team in the NFL. Absolutely the biggest surprise of the first weekend in the NFL playoffs.
2 words for you. Marcus Latimer. I don't want to rain too hard on the parade, but it is the Vikings. It's Tootell and Nuanez. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes and shocks and wheels and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only